Has a complete stranger ever unintentionally made you feel really sad, upset? A woman in a store telling me to cheer up. It's not like anyone died. The day after I'd learned my cousin committed suicide. I used to occasionally go to a local pub with some friends. We were always the youngest people there. Most of the patrons were middle-aged or older. One night they were hosting an open mic. An older gentleman, perhaps 65, sat down with his guitar. He was slightly overweight, with all of the excess weight located in his stomach. He was white-haired and balding. He looked very soft, almost fragile. He had deep creases in his forehead and next to his eyes. When he started to play, I wasn't really paying attention. Just another guy with an acoustic guitar. Then he started to sing. Within moments, he had the entire bar's attention. He had an incredible voice. It was hard to believe it came out of his old, decrepit body. He sang old blues standards and some gospel. It was very moving. At the end of his set, he came to talk to me. He saw how intently I had been watching him. He asked me and my friends to come back next week. We told him we were only in town for a little while. All of us went to schools across the country. This was during a break, and that we wouldn't be around. He looked crestfallen. He turned his eyes to the ground and said goodbye. He talked to a few more patrons before he left the bar, carrying his guitar, alone. I have never felt such vicarious loneliness. He seemed like such a tragic man. He was supremely talented but obviously very alone. For 10 minutes he had everyone's attention. 15 minutes later he left the bar by himself, half drunk on a Tuesday night. Still makes me sad when I think about it. I don't know why, but really talented people who are really lonely make me more sad than anything else, honestly. I have a friend who got in a terrible car accident and is now in a wheelchair. The first day he got out of the hospital, his family needed to take a bus somewhere. When he got on the bus, he had trouble moving his wheelchair to get secured. The bus driver, trying to joke around, asked, "What is this, your first day in a wheelchair?" My friend just started crying and said yes. There was this customer at work. I only saw her once. I work at a grocery store as a cashier. I'm usually put on the express lane, and on a particularly slow day this woman comes up. The woman is dealing with massive OCD. Everything she owns is individually wrapped in plastic bags. She wants only one item in a bag, and double bagged. I do that. No complaints. Then she pays, but each of her dollar bills and change are in their own bag, so it takes a while. I just kept smiling and we chatted while she did all of this. I didn't act like it was strange in the least, and though she was really nervous and shaky at first, she seemed a little calmer when she left. It just made me so sad because she told me that usually people are so mean to her, and I was so nice. I felt so sad for her, and I never saw her again. I honestly worry about her. We got a few customers like that at my old store, have since transferred, and I still think about them. Oh god, she's an environmentalist's worst nightmare. Last night, my husband, a pharmacist, comes home and tells me this. Today a nurse spoke at one of our meetings. She told the story of a 4-year-old girl whom had been beaten until she was brain dead by her parents. It was her birthday. She got in trouble for eating part of her birthday cake before her party. She had belt buckle imprints all over. Both of her parents were jailed, so she was alone in the hospital. Her grandmother comes in. The nurse starts to update the grandmother on the little girl's condition. "Let me stop you right there," the grandmother says. When her parents brought her in, her mother had a purse. "In that purse is my paycheck. I'm just here to pick that up." Because the little girl had no one, the nurse picked her up and held her when it was time to remove the ventilator. She sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." The room started to fill up. All the nurses and doctors on the floor crowded into the room, singing to the little girl as she passed away. Whoa, I think this is the only time I've actually considered that's enough internet for today. First day at my minimum wage grocery job, I carried out groceries for an older woman, who I have come to learn is probably batshit crazy. I put a soda in her car, and she starts crying and hugs me, telling me about how her cat got hit by a car and died, and she has no one left in the world. I had to hug back. It was just weird. I think if you got George an eye patch, not only would children embrace him, they'd want to be photographed in front of him. I did something similar with my ex-wife. My mother told me about when she was really late for work and in her blind rush bumped into an old woman, spilling all of her shopping bags. My mother then frantically apologized, running around picking up the stuff she knocked down. The old woman then slapped her across the face. To my mother's shock. To this my mum replied, well, frick you then, and threw her shopping all over the floor again. I've had almost the exact same situation. Ran into someone while running to class late and made their papers fly everywhere. Just as I finished getting everyone and apologizing, the guy says, thanks, idiot. The speed that those papers left my hands and entered the air was truly amazing. Usually I don't care about people's comments, but a few years ago I was at the bar and I saw this cute girl just standing there socializing with her friends. When I saw her alone at the bar, I decided to make my approach and talk to her. She seemed nice enough, but I could tell there just wasn't much interest on her end, so after a few minutes I just let it go. Fast forward to around an hour later, I was leaving the bar and waiting for a cab. The cute girl and her group of friends were within earshot of me, also waiting for a cab. I guess she didn't see me, but the girl started to rip into me saying things like "Ugh, tonight sucked." Some weird ugly dude in the green t-shirt approached me. What was he thinking? I mean, this was like a minute of just ripping into me. The friend saw that I heard everything and hushed her shortly after. The last laugh went to me, I guess because I managed to get a cab first, and when the girls mentioned to me we can split up, please let us go in, I gave them the finger, hoped in, and the cabbie drove off. On the cab ride home I felt pretty bad. It sucks hearing that kind of crap. Landmine successfully avoided. A stranger once suggested that I commit suicide for being so skinny. She apparently didn't think I could hear her, but it sorta put a damper on my day. You know what, I'm so sick of people thinking it's okay to comment on your weight if you're skinny. Well, guess the frick what? It isn't. Yup, walking around Boston, a school bus full of kids passes by. One of the kids in the back, he was probably 13 or 14, yelled, "How's it feel to have no soul? I have red hair. I am kinda pale. I am also very large in the sense that not too many people frick with me, at least not for a good reason. So I've never had to deal with this gingers have no souls thing." I thought the South Park episode was hilarious, and I get a kick out of ginger jokes, but I had never been at the receiving end of a ginger insult that was meant to make the ginger feel bad. I'm not sure why this affected me so much, but I really felt disheartened. Not because I have red hair, but because this little crap wanted to hurt some random guy on the street. Feels bad, man. I think it was unintentional. I think she thought she was helping. We had an interior designer come to look at our new office space at work. On being introduced to me, the first thing she said to me was, "That color looks horrible on you. It washes you out. You shouldn't wear it." Then continue talking to my boss about the art we should have on the walls. That was the only thing she ever said to me, and I haven't worn teal ever since. Turns out it does look bad on me. That color looks horrible on you. It washes you out. You shouldn't wear it. How rude. Teal. Oh. It was the middle of winter and raining pretty heavily outside, and I was going to go and buy some lunch at the shop. This homeless dude was sat outside completely soaked to his skin, and I presumed he was probably cold and hungry, so I went up to him and asked if he wanted me to get him something to eat in the shop, a chocolate bar or something, and I'd bring it out to him. As soon as I asked, this guy just broke the frick down, put his head in his hands and through his sobs said, "I don't want any food, I just need money for a bus ride, just some change so I can get out of this fricking rain." It was at this point that the owners came out and told him they were calling the police, so I gave him some change and he ran off. I kept on thinking about it all day and felt guilty. This dude was homeless, sitting in the rain and cold, and I asked him if he wanted me to get him a fricking chocolate bar. I felt stupid, sad and guilty, and I wasn't even sure why. I had a job I loved in a town I loved, and I left them both because it was time to move on. There was no room for growth in that job and I'd been doing it for 5 years. I said my goodbyes, tried to make a clean break, and moved to Tokyo for my new job. On my first day of work, when I was walking to the office, I saw a woman who'd put her bag down to adjust her makeup while looking in a window. She then started walking away without picking up a bag. I grabbed the bag and walked up to her to tap her on the shoulder. When I did, She jumped away and cowered while staring at me. Okay, I startled her. Fine. I held out the bag and she looked at me from head to toe like I was a piece of corn that had fallen out of a donkey's butt. Then she grabbed the bag out of my hands and started walking quickly, in the opposite direction she'd been walking in before. No thanks. No apologies. It was pretty cold and very hurtful and it definitely colored my impression of Tokyo. Maybe a bomb was actually in the bag, or a bunch of money for a hostage exchange, and the lady was actually making a drop. You ruined the entire carefully planned exchange or bombing, and depending, either saved a bunch of lives, or ruined the life of the hostage. I used to design invitations for brides. I really hated the job. Most of the women were complete B, and so were their mothers. They just felt so dang entitled to everything and I just wanted to say you are just getting married, you aren't a queen. One day, a very young couple comes in, maybe 18 years old. They were getting married and the girl had this great idea for her invitation. After I priced everything out, it was pretty expensive, like $4 or $5 expensive per invitation, which adds up with labor and quantity. All of this was done by hand. I could see how crestfallen she was and her fiancé said, well, my dad can help pay for the rent this time so we can get your invitations the way you want. I felt so uncomfortable witnessing this obviously very private conversation and I could tell he wanted to do anything he could to pay for these invitations. She got embarrassed, I think, and snapped at him to not talk about that. They said they would think about it and walked off. I sat there, feeling so awful for them and decided frick it, I'm not going to charge them for the labor and I'll half the price for the materials. She was the nicest bride-to-be I ever had and deserved to have the invitation she wanted. I ran after them and told them I cut the price in half and didn't charge for labor. The look on her face was the greatest, happiest thing ever. Good for you for doing something as kind as that. I am sure they had a brilliant wedding and you should feel really proud with yourself for doing something like that. I don't have a story like this, but I do remember a situation in which I was the butthole. I work in retail and I was standing behind the counter talking to one of my co-workers. We were arguing about something, and a customer walked up right as I was finishing my point and said, "You're out of your element, Donnie." The customer immediately started crying, left her stuff on the counter and walked out. She was a regular, and I was completely stunned. When she came back in a few days later, I apologized and asked what I did wrong. She said, "Nothing. My sister just died, and The Big Lebowski was her favorite movie." When I heard you say that, I just couldn't keep it together anymore. TLDR. I made a customer cry by making a Lebowski reference. I was 5 years of age, shopping with me mum, trying to help push the trolley. Mum went looking for something and left me standing with the trolley in an aisle briefly. A woman with her own trolley entered the aisle in a rush, rolled up to me standing proudly with my trolley like a grown-up, and let loose a tirade on my innocent young butt. Why did I have to stand here in everyone's way? What was I trying to prove pushing my own trolley around and making a hassle for all the shoppers? I nearly wrenched my arms out of their sockets crab walking the trolley to the side so she could pass. It sounds silly now, but the awful moment when all my grown-up pride standing there independently with my trolley was shattered by that awful woman still hurts a bit to this day. This is the most British post I've read in a long time. Me and my sister both look alike. We're not twins. She's 4 years older, and she is pregnant. We went to a party and someone walked up to me and wished me luck with my pregnancy before she left. I guess it's time to hit the gym. Hope you're at least female. When I was a young lad, maybe 9 or 10, I had guitar lessons. I had been brought up listening to old school rock and my favorite song was Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water. After weeks of practice, I had finally mastered the song and felt like an absolute boss. Naturally, I was eager to tell my friends. I get dropped off at school one morning and say to my little chums in my proudest voice, "I learned Smoke on the Water." The impressed looks and congratulations I received were soon forgotten. However, when I heard a cackle over my shoulder, I turn and see a smug-looking mother grinning at me. "That's nothing," she says. "My 6-year-old can play it." The words hurt bad. Needless to say, I was crushed and the words sting even to this day. TLDR. B. Stranger mum crushes my childhood dreams of becoming a rock star. Her 6-year-old can't play it. Her 6-year-old can only play the root notes of the intro. I am sure of this. People seem to have a lot of trouble distinguishing my gender, and they find the rudest ways possible to find it out. I fully acknowledge that I don't exactly look very feminine, and if you really have to ask, go ahead. I'm not gonna get upset. Chances are I'll have a laugh about it. Some girl crashed into me the other day in the hallway. The way she crashed, her hand ended grabbing my chest. She apologized profusely and seemed really embarrassed. I figured it was just a socially awkward penguin moment and felt bad for her and told her it was alright. But then she runs back to her little group of friends, giggling, and says, "See, told you it was a girl. See, told you it was a girl." Freaking really. A little backstory. I had a lot of issues when I was younger. Problems with drugs and alcohol, and a major problem with cutting. It's been over 3 years since I stopped, but I have massive scars on both arms from a really bad night that required 30+ stitches. Now it's been 5 years since then, and the scars have faded quite a bit but are definitely visible. After years of wearing long sleeves every day, even in the middle of summer, I finally decided to wear short sleeves for a day. I was pretty nervous, worried that everyone was staring, but surprisingly enough, no one seemed to care. I was feeling pretty confident. I got on the train just before rush hour, and after a while I notice a young girl, maybe 5 or 6, is staring at me with a look of intense curiosity. She turns to her mom and asks, "Mommy, what happened to that girl's arms?" Her mom turns and looks at me, and her expression changes from puzzled to disgusted. She grabs her daughter and says, "Don't look at her. Cover your eyes right now." When her daughter refuses and steps towards me, the mom grabs her and pulls her away from me, shouting, "Stay away from her. You don't ever talk to people like her." The train pulls up to the station and she starts leading her daughter out the door. Before she leaves, she looks at me and says, "You should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you traumatize my daughter like that? You stay away from my family." I never said a word to either of them. I didn't do anything except stand there and mind my own goddamn business, and yet I was publicly berated and treated like a freaking pedo just because I have scars. I would do anything to get rid of them. Frick. Feels Bidman. Hey, I've been there. It sucks. I know, but you overcame a lot. That mother was an absolute C. Don't be scared to wear short sleeves because of that. People will stare, but it's because they're curious. Try not to let it bother you too much. I hope things have gotten better for you. 3. I work at a Dairy Queen in my hometown. It was within my first month working, and it was one of my first times working drive. A man pulls up, starts shouting at me for literally 15 cones, all different flavors, sizes, and in different orders. His order made no sense, not to mention he was being a dickwad. So I kept asking him, "I'm sorry sir, can you please repeat it?" and things similar. He gets pee, pulls away, comes inside, and yells at me. Last time I have a retard like you take my order, I was so pee. I went in back and started crying. It was so frustrating and upsetting. Call me a baby if you want, but it was super crappy. Every right to be upset. That's unnecessarily cruel. A dude walking past me told me that I look ugly. Out of the blue, no reason for it. He just did it to impress his friends. What and but? Girl I had just met was talking to me and we were joking around about relationships, and she just said something like, "I am guessing you don't really understand these jokes much though, do you?" It was just a joke, of course, but I took it to heart pretty bad cause it was true. Yes, I was living in Columbus, Ohio in 2010, and my family lived down in Texas when the grandma I was close to was diagnosed with colon cancer. She had a number of other problems as well, so the family knew she most likely didn't have much longer. About a week after that announcement, I went to an ice cream shop and in walks this little old lady with her grandsons. They all got something and sat down close to me, and then more family members showed up and hung out. Seeing that grandma being able to walk around and spend time with her grandkids' family reminded me that I was most likely never going to do that again with my grandma, and it tore me up inside to the point of wanting to cry right there. I threw my treat away and left because I couldn't deal seeing that pleasant family scene anymore. A while back, I learned it's likely I'll never be able to conceive children. My boyfriend at the time left me over it because he wanted his own kids. That stung a bit, but I did my best to move on with my life. About a year later, I was at work, in a call center. A woman called in because she had not paid her gas bill in over 4 months, and this was the first really cold night of the year. She had no heat. She claimed there was a law on the books that said we couldn't let someone with children go without heat. There is no such law in this state. I've checked. She had also already had 4 months of free gas. I told her as much, and she said you must be one heartless child-hating bee to let poor innocent children go without heat. God, I hope you never have kids. And I said sadly, I can't. And she goes, well, that's awfully convenient for you. Also, a side note, we also have a fuel assistance program for people who are having trouble paying their bills. And brochures for it get sent out with past due bills. But after 4 months, the account goes to collections and service is shut off. So really, this woman just ignored the problem until it was too late, then took it out on me. Not exactly unintentional, but it ruined the rest of my week. It's people who would continue to humiliate you even after telling them the unfortunate truth that gets my blood boiling. I'm sorry that happened to you. I worked at a grocery store in a small town and someone started talking crap about a girl who worked at Sizzler, saying that she's a nasty person because she strips as a second job. They didn't know she was my best friend and that she had jumped off an overpass in front of a diesel a week before. And the worst part is that people saying crap like that probably prompted her. I worked at a gas station for a year and a half. I will never forget one older man who became completely irate over something that was his own mistake, like not being able to swipe his credit card correctly or something. So I go out to help him do it and immediately get harassed about the way the pumps work and how he's never coming back, etc. I fixed the problem and told him it's not a big deal. There's no reason to be so upset, sir. He proceeds by telling me he wouldn't be so pee off if I didn't have all that crap in my face. I had small gauges and lip studs. He walked away and I didn't even know what to say back. I couldn't imagine how much a complete stranger could judge me and treat me like that for such a stupid reason. I've always thought that an upshot of having piercing, sometimes it lets you see right away who isn't worth your time cause they can't look past appearances. I was in high school, an all-girls school, and I was in the computer rooms. I already had pretty awful self-esteem from the passive-aggressive bullying the girls subjected me to. But then, this girl working on the computer that was up opposite my own asks who I am to my friend sitting beside me. My friend introduces me and I lean to the side, past the computer screen, smiling politely so she can see my face. She audibly gasped, "URRGH" at my face and ignored me from then on. Still makes me feel sad thinking about it. Insults are one thing, but full-on physical reactions to my supposed ugliness are another. A couple years ago, on a summer evening, I was hanging out with some friends at home. I lived on the last street before farmland in a large suburban neighborhood. It was well after dark, probably 9 o'clock. The front door was open and an elderly lady knocked on the door frame. She looked lost and scared. She said she had taken a walk and after an hour became lost. She said she was new to the neighborhood and didn't know where her house was. She knew the street name and that was it. She didn't even know her own phone number. The look on her face brought tears to my eyes. I told her I'd be happy to give her a ride. I looked up the street name online to see where it was, and to my surprise she had walked several miles. I drove her back to where she said she lived, and I had to drive around the block twice before she recognized the house. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, took my hand before she got out of the car and said, "God bless you. You are a good person. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't given me a ride." As soon as she closed the door and began to walk inside, I burst into tears. I made sure she got inside okay, and cried all the way home. This poor lady probably had Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, and she was all alone walking around, terrified. Losing your memory is such a terrible affliction. I hope she gets the care she needs. But you're a good person for helping her out. Plus 10 imaginary karma points. Good sir, madam. When I was around 6 years old, I went to get fresh bread, roti, from a baker. In my country, people can buy fresh roti from the baker who bakes it in front of you in an open natural oven. I was waiting there for a long time to get the roti and the guy was ignoring me, probably cause I was a kid. When he finally took out roti and placed it in front of me, I went ahead to pick it but it was flaming hot. It skipped my hand. I forwarded me hand again and picked it but the baker snatched it from me and gave it to the person standing besides me cause according to him I was an idiot and not fast enough. After few more minutes of waiting I finally got another roti and asked for the bag and the guy refused, saying that I can't have a bag for only one roti. I rolled the hot roti and grabbed it in my hand and came back. I got so upset that day thinking why he acted so bad with me. Sorry for grammar or spelling. Never any need to apologize for grammar when it is not your native language. Reddit does love to correct people but please ignore them. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.